Internal Revenue Service IRS Tax News. IRS.gov has answers about filing, paying, and July 15th due date. IR 2020-145, July 9th, 2020, Washington. As the July due date for filing a tax return draws closer, the Internal Revenue Service reminds taxpayers about the many resources available on IRS.gov, IRS.gov, the IRS website. Whether a home computer or mobile devices, the number of taxpayers visiting IRS.gov continues to grow year after year. That may be because they canceled the phone service due to social distancing. Now the website is improving. It's a great resource. You do want to be checking out the information on the IRS.gov website. Back to the text. Easy to use tools. There's a link to the tools here. Available 24 hours a day on the IRS website. Have been used more than 1.2 billion times this year. IRS.gov is home to IRS Free File. So you got the Free File software. So if you're under a certain income level, you may be able to use the Free File tool, filing your tax return for free. What I would keep in mind when you are using that is, do you have the state capacity? So you want to consider what other tax obligations you have, including the state obligation, and whatever tool you're using, it would be nice if it could pick up the Fed and the state, because those things typically happen at the same time. The tools are getting better and better, so oftentimes they will be able to pick up the state, but because the state tax returns are more diverse, different from each state, then it's a little bit more difficult to standardize that when you're thinking about the IRS website. Obviously, the focus is on the federal tax. The state and federal taxes will differ, but hopefully the tax software can be such that you can do both of those items if you need to, if you're in a state that has income tax. Back to the text. Where's My Refund? So they have a tool on Where's My Refund, so you can track your refund and be using that to see if you have indeed received the refund or if it's on its way and that kind of stuff. The Tax Withholding Estimator, another great tool. This is really a nice tool because it can help you to think about, it's basically designed as a tax planner almost now, because you have a tax withholding estimator, which originally was really designed to help you out with your W-4 withholdings so that you can fill out your W-4 correctly, so that when you get money taken out of your W-2, then it's the correct amount, so hopefully you don't owe money or have any refund. You have a perfect tax return that's perfect, but that doesn't happen. Usually, hopefully you get a little bit of a refund, but because the W-4 has gotten so complex now, it's become more complex to fill out and estimate a W-4. You basically have to do an entire tax projection in order to figure out what to tell them about your W-4, so the withholdings can be accurate. And therefore, this thing is basically a nice tax projection tool almost. It's almost like software that is pretty good that you can put in, a tax projection for a fairly basic type of return on. So you can do it for, almost like tax planning purposes and whatnot. And you can run scenarios with it if you want. Again, if they're basic, fairly basic scenarios. So a good tool there to check out. Back to the text. And a host of other convenient applications. Additional help is available on Publication 17, your federal income tax for individuals. There's a link to that here, available on the IRS.gov website. Publication 17 is also available on eBook. Taxpayers who have yet to file their tax returns should file electronically now and choose direct deposits if they're getting a refund. So taxpayers who owe for tax year 2019 can pay anytime up to the July 15th due date. So the 2019 tax return, as we know, has been extended now to July 15th. IRS has been telling us that multiple times. They're trying to push that out there. The due date is coming up. They're hoping that people, still pay them, even though we've pushed out the deadlines out here. So they're looking for their money at this point in time. So just remember that as you file the tax return, the deadline for the payments is going to be different than the deadlines for the actual tax return. So you're trying to avoid penalties and interest. That means you have to do two things to avoid penalties and interest. One, file the tax return on time, which 2019 is due July 15th, or file an extension for it, in which case you have until October. And you also need to avoid other penalties and interest, make the payments, which is a kind of a separate thing. So if you owed any taxes for 2019, then you'd want to pay them, even if you're going to put the tax return on extension in order to avoid any further penalties and interest related to that. Now, if you're going to get a refund for 2019, then what you would like to do is make the refund, give them your information so they can electronically give you the refund, meaning banking information so that they can deposit it directly into your bank account. They're slow on the paper checks right now due to social distancing. I have some thoughts that they might purposely be slow because they're trying to get people off of the paper checks and the paper refunds. But clearly due to social distancing, the refunds are going to be slower, and they really are pushing for people to do the electronic stuff. So if you want your refund faster, then once you use the software, you'd like to give them the information so they can deposit it directly. If you owe them money, they would like to get their money faster, and you can pay them directly. That's the easiest thing to do. But maybe then you just file a paper return or something like that, and send them a check and hope they lose it or something. No, they'll process it, but it'll be later to process the check most likely. But you want to make sure that you sent it in at the correct time. So back to text. File electronically for free. Taxpayers whose income was $69,000 or less last year are eligible to use the IRS Free File, so there's a link to the Free File here, software to do their taxes. Also, regardless of income, any taxpayer who is comfortable preparing their own taxes can use Free File fillable forms. So that's going to be a little bit more complicated. These are the Free File fillable forms. So you're going to have to do more of the basically entering everything line by line into the boxes, whereas most software will be more of like an interview type process. So if you're not proficient, if you're not going to spend a decent amount of time looking through the instructions to actually fill out the tax return more in a line by line system, then the Free File fillable forms may not be the best option. You might want to go somewhere else. The file software is a good option if you qualify for that. And then, of course, you can go from there and think about what other options you might want to do, including other proprietary software, H&R Block, for example, or Intuit's software, the maker of QuickBooks, which is TurboTax. And then you could think about tax preparers to help you out as well. Taxpayers can use these electronic versions of IRS tax forms to complete their taxes and file them online. Free file options are available at IRS.gov/free file. There's a link to that here. Get answers to tax questions. Taxpayers can find answers to many of their questions using the interactive tax assistant. There's a link to that here. It's a tax law resource that uses a series of questions and responses to help. IRS.gov also has answers to frequently asked questions, linked to that here, on a variety of topics. The IRS website also has tax information in Spanish, Espanol, Chinese, Korean, Russian, Vietnamese, and Haitian. Where's My Refund? So where is My Refund tool? Taxpayers can easily find the most up-to-date information about their tax refund using Where's My Refund. There's a link to Where's My Refund here tool on IRS.gov and the IRS mobile app. That's the IRS.to-go app. There's a link to that here. Within 24 hours after the IRS acknowledges receipt of an electronically filed return, taxpayers can start checking on the status of their refund. So the nice thing about the electronic return is, when it was a paper return, we had to fill out the paper return, make sure that we send it in at the correct time before the correct date. And then we have to kind of worry, we might want to get some verification in the mail to see that it actually was received on the IRS's side to be able to verify that we sent it in on time so that we don't have any penalties. With the electronic files, it's nice because the IRS should give you some verification that, hey, we've received it, right? We've received it. We haven't processed it. We haven't done anything with it, but at least they can say we got it a lot sooner, which is nice. And that's going to give you some verification that and give you some relief that you're not going to have penalties related to the late filing. Also, once they have it, even if they have not processed it, you should be able to go to Where's My Refund and at least be able to check and they can tell you, hey, we haven't processed it yet or whatever until they give you the tool. So it's nice that you get that kind of feedback pretty quickly, at least knowing, somewhat where they are in the process, at least that they got it. And then you can track where the refund is from there. Back to the text, schedule a payment. Taxpayers can file now and schedule their federal tax payment up to the July 15th due date. They can pay online, by phone, or with their mobile device and the IRS.gov app. When paying federal taxes electronically, taxpayers should remember electronic payment options, there's a link to those here, are the best way to make tax payments. So again, IRS looking for electronic payments. Electronic payments are a lot easier. They are probably the best way to go for many reasons. They give a good audit trail, paper trail. They're going to be fast to have over there. But obviously the IRS, from the IRS's standpoint, as the recipient of the payment now, it's faster too. So for the recipient of the payment, they would like to get the money, as soon as possible. So back to the text. They can pay when they e-file by using tax software online. If using a tax preparer, taxpayers should ask the preparer to make the tax payment through an electronic funds withdrawal from a bank account. So if you're working with tax software like a TurboTax or an H&R Block or something type of software, then you should be able to set up your payment through the software to make the payment electronically, which means you have to enter the banking information or your payment information into it in order to do so. And if you're working with a tax preparer that's a professional tax preparer, they will almost certainly be using some type of software, which should then have that capacity as well. So you want to follow up on that and see what they think about the payment option. Back to the text. IRS Direct Pay, there's a link to that here, allows taxpayers to pay online directly from a checking or savings account for free. So you can pay directly from the checking or savings account with no fee if it's going directly from the bank. Credit card's a little bit different, but if it's direct from the bank, then no fee from the IRS on that. Taxpayers can choose to pay with a credit card, debit card, or digital wallet option through a payment processor. There's a link to that here. No fee go to the IRS. Now, the payment processor to process the credit card is actually a third-party company, I believe. So it's not simply the IRS. They need help, to process that through. Therefore, you may have a charge for that payment method. So it may not be the best method if you can do it electronically with a banking system. But the IRS is not the one that's charging you. It's the third-party banking system that may charge you for the credit card. But the bottom line is you might have a small fee for the credit card, and you wouldn't have a small fee for the other if you just have the bank, and the small fee isn't the IRS's fault because they're not the ones that are charging it, but it'll still be there. Back to the text. The IRS.gov app provides mobile-friendly payment options, including direct pay and payment processors on mobile devices. Taxpayers may also enroll in the electronic federal tax payment system, there's a link to that here, and pay online or by phone. They can pay with cash or at a retail partner, new locations available. This is the one that's kind of shocking to me. You can actually pay them with cash now. You don't want to mail them cash. It's never good to mail cash. They won't know what to do with it. But you can use cash actually to process it if you go to the proper retail store, and they can help you process that. Again, you can look into that more if that's going to be an option here. The thing that's funny to me about that is because usually the cash has no audit trail, and the IRS likes to have, an audit trail, a check or something like that, an electronic payment. But yeah, cash, you can just go pay them with cash. And so, but you have to go to the store and go through the process, so it might take a little bit longer in order to pay with cash. And it might have a fee because, once again, you're going to go through third parties in order to help you through the process to pay with cash, and they're going to charge a fee. I don't think it's the IRS charging the fee, once again, to pay with cash. Back to the text. Taxpayers go to the IRS.gov/account to securely access information about their federal tax account. They can view the amount they owe, access their tax records online, review their payment history, and view key information for the most recent tax return as originally filed. So you can get a lot of information these days on the IRS website about your own account. If you are thinking about past returns that you have not filed, or even 2019, and you have something you're like, I'm not sure if I should have got, forms from them. At some point, the transcripts that the W-2s went to the IRS, so they should be able to process through it at some point, and you should be able to get them from the IRS side if you have to. So in other words, if you're looking at 2019 or for sure 2018 or something like that, and you're trying to fill out the tax returns and you don't have a W-2 or a 1099 or something like that, then you want to go to the employer, because what you want is the original W-2 if you can get it, because you want the state information as well. But if you can't get it, then you should be able to get a transcript from the IRS on using the IRS website, possibly, to get that information on their side, or at least verify it on the IRS sides, which is a nice thing to have more easily done these days. Back to the text. Not required to file a tax return. Non-filer tool available to register for economic impact payment. People who are not normally required to file a tax return and don't plan to do so can use the non-filers, there's a link to that tool, to get an economic impact payment. So we've discussed this earlier when they were trying to push out the economic impact payments. They were trying to say, hey, if you don't file a tax return, you may be able to use this non-filers tool in order to give us the information in order to file a tax return. Now, there's only, even if you don't file a tax return, there's only a few people that would still, because you might be getting payments from some other government institution, in which case they still would have processed your payment. So it would only be if you're not getting something like Social Security or something like that from other government institutions and you don't file a tax return that you would think that you may be able to use this non-filer tool in order to see if you can get your economic impact payment in that case. Back to the text. The only way they can get these payment is to register with the IRS by using this free tool. Available in both English and Spanish, the tool was developed jointly by the IRS and Free File Alliance. The registration deadline is October 15th, 2020. More information and links below here. There'll be a link to this in the description.